Okay, so this video is of what we call the Yellow Trail out at Red River Motorcycle Trails. It's probably one of the most ridden trails in the park, I would guess. It's just kind of a loosely formed trail with some yellow ribbon, so I've ridden it 2 or 3 times, but I don't think there's any kind of specific way to go. To get to it, as you can see from the parking lot, you just cross Mountain Creek there, and it is literally just on the other side of the creek, which is probably why it's one of the more ridden trails. Riding with us today in front is Keith. Keith is 71 years old, and he hauls ass. He's got a 2017 KTM 300 XCW, and especially on this trail, boy, he can get moving on this trail. Whenever I get to be 71 years old, I want to be just like Keith. We had a whole bunch of riders with us on this day, like 5 or 6 people. I'll get to all of them here in a minute, but as you can see, the dirt today was April 19th, I believe, which was Good Friday, Friday before Easter, and you can tell they haven't had any rain in a while, so the ground is pretty loose. We were getting quite a bit of dust. So I think behind me is Gary on his 250 XCW, his 18 250 XCW. He should be right behind me. And then we had Kevin, I don't know what Kevin's last name, Jim Donovan, who I've just recently been riding with. Gojko Lumovic, I think is how you say his name. This part's funny right here.
What the hell?
What the hell you guys do?
I don't know.
Talking about a gay porn. Lost my balance.
That was unexpected, but anyway, back to the riders. That's Gary. I went ahead and let him get in front of me now because I didn't want him to run into me anymore. Just kidding. I think he just tried to stop and couldn't quite balance, fell over. But anyway, Gojko is with us. He's on a TE 300. Husqvarna, and Richard Carrera is with us. Both Richard and Gojko we met through the Enduro Masterclass that we do with Graham Jarvis each year. Richard was actually going to be part of the class the first year, but had to have knee surgery or something like that, so he wasn't able to take the class. But he did take the class the next year, and in fact, the bike that he's riding is actually the bike that Graham Jarvis used. So that bike knows how to do a lot of this stuff. If Richard doesn't, the bike does. Right there, I tried to get a lot of those other guys to go in front of me, so I'm kind of in the back now. I think, well, I was impatiently in the back, I guess. But I let those other guys, tried to get those other guys to go in front of me. So Gojko and Richard went ahead and got in front of me, but Jim and Kevin said that they liked riding in the back, so I just kind of let them stay back there. Right there, I kind of thought I could get around there, but as you can see, everybody comes back around. I'd say in this particular group, Gojko is the youngest of everybody. He's, I think he's in his 30s. And I'm not sure if, I think I was probably the second oldest, with Keith being the oldest at 71. And then Jim and Kevin were pretty close to me. Get into my next story here, which is my ribs. This is 2 weeks after I took a bad spill over in Costa Rica, where I was trying to climb the hill and fell up against a tree, and I think I cracked a rib right along my spine on my back. It's pretty painful, but it healed. This is 2 weeks later, so it was enough to where I could ride. I did end up getting sore and I didn't ride too much on this day because I was pretty sore, but And to top all, that was, like I said, April 19th. So to top all of that off, 3 weeks later, which was last week now, I was heading out to Ballsapalooza on the Friday before Ballsapalooza and decided to go on a quick ride with a couple of friends of mine that were out there. And honestly, I was riding this trail. I was probably riding way too fast on this trail. We ended up getting down in the creek over by Costa Rica, and I came around a corner, and I don't know what happened, but I went down really hard. I mean, fortunately at that time I wasn't really going that fast around that corner, but I ended up breaking 4 ribs, and so it was kind of a challenge to get back out of there. I did have to ride all the way back to camp to get out of there, but I've broken a lot of bones in the years I've been doing this, so which isn't that long, 4 or 5 years. Collarbone, ribs 2 times the 4, broken hand, broke my leg, which was the worst. As far as broken ribs goes, pretty much anything you do to your ribs, you feel like they're broken. I don't know if that's really the case, having experienced what I just experienced. I know they'd all feel the same, but I can't believe I'd have been back to riding after 2 weeks after breaking a rib on my right side back on a couple weeks before this date. But there's no doubt that this time around is completely different than all of the other times. I can literally feel them moving around in there. 2 of the bones aren't even touching anymore. So if any of the other ones were broken, they were probably just cracked. All of these were broken clean through, with one of them that's not even touching the other bone right now. So every time I breathe, it feels like my entire rib cage is just moving around. So I'm sure probably everybody that does this has broken ribs. I'm sure everybody has their own broken rib stories, but that's mine. It's not comfortable, so if I make some weird noises or something while I'm recording this, you'll understand why. But as you can see, there's a little yellow ribbon right there. The trail is kind of loosely defined, and every time I've ridden it, half the times I don't know I'm riding it, but a lot of times I'm just following these guys here, so I just kind of rely on them to kind of know where we're going. So it's kind of loosely defined, and you kind of go back and forth, and you don't see a yellow ribbon for a while, and you see another yellow ribbon, and you jump on the trail there. But it is pretty fun. It's I guess what you would kind of consider fast and flowy, at least for Red River anyway. It's not like everything out at Red River is going to be either kind of sandy or rocky and stuff like that, so you definitely have to deal with all that stuff. But you can ride it pretty quick. It's pretty fun when you're riding with other people. You know, you can, especially if you're behind other people, you can kind of pick alternate lines, and you can pick little things to jump off of, go around, and so forth, like I'm doing in this video. One thing I'll say is, whenever I broke my ribs last week, I was the one leading, and I don't usually lead, and I think that's why I was riding too fast, is that I really didn't have anything to pace myself, so I was just going. There was parts that I thought I was going too fast, but I thought, well, I don't know, everybody else seems to, I'm not having to wait on anybody too much, so normally riding behind people like this for me is probably what I prefer to do. I think this video is about 16 minutes or so. As you can see, it kind of weaves in and out different tree sections, kind of make it into a sort of single track. A lot of this, if you're riding it on the weekend, obviously the trails are pretty wide. You could run into side-by-sides and four-wheelers, probably more four-wheelers than side-by-sides, especially because it tends to be a little bit closer to the river. I'm sorry, the creek, and usually on the weekends, most of the park traffic kind of tends to stay pretty close to Mountain Creek, at least the four-wheeler and side-by-side traffic. You don't see them too far back into there. We are getting a little bit further back into it now, which is probably, you'd probably be safe back around where we were now, especially if you get to the creek that we're coming up to. I don't know if that other creek even has a name. I just call it Holly's Creek because it's the creek that ends up at, I think it's called Holly's Hideout or Holly's Hideaway, but you can see it over to the left there. It's a lot of fun too. One of these days we'll just ride up and down that and I'll make a little video on that. The biggest bummer about breaking my rib cage was that I didn't get to do anything with Balls of Palooza. I was in a lot of pain and ended up having to go home Friday night, so I missed the entire event. I mean, it obviously sucks that I don't get to ride for a few weeks. But I was kind of really looking forward to photographing the event again and hanging out with everyone and all that. If you've ridden Red River motorcycle trails, you've probably ridden all of this stuff hundreds of times, so this probably isn't anything new to anybody, but somebody did go out there with some yellow ribbon like you just saw right there and kind of tried to mark out a trail that you could kind of follow. So I don't know if this trail is a loop or not. I'll be honest, I usually follow somebody and it kind of seems like at some point we just end up riding along the same stuff again, so I think they're just out riding and want to keep going, so they don't get to a quote end of the trail. They just kind of, we get back on a road, we see a yellow ribbon, we take it again, and we end up kind of doing little mini loops over and over, and then at some point, you know, we've had enough and just head back to camp. So I can't tell you that if you were going to go out and ride this trail, just follow the yellow ribbon all the time. You probably need to know a little bit about where you are, at least as far as I'm aware. Like I said, I've never tried to follow it from start to finish. I don't even know that it's marked as a start to finish. But you can see again, there's another yellow ribbon there, so. I guess at some point it's going to get you to a spot that you recognize and can start heading back. Pretty much if you get to Holly's Creek, and that creek I was talking about, you can follow that back down and eventually it takes you to the Red River. You're not supposed to ride in the Red River, but if you take it down that way, you can generally, once you get into Mountain Creek, you can find your way back to the parking lot since it's right there on the park. This is kind of a stupid move by me here too. I thought, oh, I'm going to go up here, but as you can see, it's just basically crashing through a bunch of branches. So since I have a broken rib cage and probably won't be riding, I hope to try to make a few more videos of some different places that I've been lately. I had a whole week to do it, but honestly, I really didn't feel like doing a damn thing except sitting on the couch, and even that was somewhat painful. Everybody talks about breathing and coughing and all that with broken ribs. Hell, I was having a hard time just sipping a glass of water. But I did go to the doctor, and they said I didn't have any internal bleeding or anything like that, and basically just deal with it. Gave me some muscle relaxers and some pain pills, which I've pretty much stopped taking all of that now, so less than a week later I was off of all that, so hopefully that means it's healing up pretty quick. Anyway, I'll shut up till the end of the video now. I'm going to probably shut it off here before too long because, like I said, we kind of start repeating some of the trails that we've been on and so forth. But that is the yellow trail out at Red River Motorcycle Trails. If you come out, just cross Mountain Creek, find some yellow ribbon, and follow it to your heart's content.